and welcome to Merryweather Knitting. My name is Gabriella and I'm coming to you from my home in Germany, where I'm so excited to chat with you today about knitting and all that I've been making this week. I've been so inspired by my crafting this week. I've really enjoyed the projects I have on the needles, and I've even also ventured out a little bit into other fiber crafts this week, which has been so much fun and just a real treat. I kind of needed that. I don't know what it was, but inspiration just struck this week. So I'm excited to share all of those things with you. I'd love to hear what you have on the needles, what you've been making, knitting, maybe what you have on the wheel or on the spindle, or maybe just what you've been doing in the kitchen, what you've been baking or cooking. I would love to hear all of those things. I think I wanted to say before I begin that all of my show notes will no longer be in the description box below, but will now be on my blog, on my website, merryweatherliving.com. I'll leave a link below to the post where all the show notes are for this episode, but that's the new place, the new thing, and it's very exciting. I'm very excited about having a new website and blog. I'll share more about that later on in the episode, a little bit more of those kind of details, but for now, if you're just looking for show notes about, projects, knitting patterns or yarn or anything like that, you can find that all in the post that's linked below. So I'm going to begin today sharing with you a work in progress that I have, which I showed last week. I had just cast it on last week, and it is a new pair of socks, a very fresh pair of socks, and I will be honest with you, I don't have very much done. If you look at the project, let me show you. It is a beautiful, beautiful yarn, and my ball is not as that very beautiful, so I apologize for that. I feel a little bit of ashamed of that because this yarn is so glorious and wonderful. This is Paper Crane Yarns yarn, which is dyed by Ashley of the Paper Crane Yarns podcast and Etsy shop. I will of course link her shop in the show notes, and this is a sock yarn. I think this is either a 80-20 or 75-25 merino nylon sock yarn, and this colorway is called Soleil. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful colorway, and honestly, this colorway has been the greatest inspiration for these pair of socks that I've been knitting. Because I shared last week that I wanted to kind of go along and make something up as I went, kind of just think up a little cable or lace pattern for these socks, a textured pattern, something like that. And so last week I had just shown the cuff to you, which I enjoyed knitting so much, although cuff goes very quickly. So I wanted to continue on, and like I said, you cannot see much progress. Look at that tiny little bit, but I did rib it back a couple of times because I've been experimenting with little motifs. I decided like a traditional kind of sock with a little lace cabled motif down the kind of front of the sock was what I wanted to do for this pair rather than a texture, because I really like seeing a little bit of the stockinette of this colorway, and I just like that. I think it's fun to have a panel of texture or of, lace or cables. It's really very lacy. But I'll show it to you in a second, but I just want to say it's been such a challenge because I had an idea about what I wanted when I started, and that idea has evolved and changed as I've knit and also as I've continued to look at the colorway, because for me this colorway is the primary inspiration for this pair of socks. I've been really wanting to draw inspiration from different places. I talked last week about how I've enjoyed looking through art books, and I always like to kind of see different places and apply that to different areas. I don't know if that makes sense the way that I'm saying that, but kind of I I think music can give you inspiration for your knitting or for your writing or for your other, for your painting. If you're listening to music and you're a painter, I think inspiration is kind of best encapsulated and reborn into the world when it's not from the same media. I don't know how to explain that properly. I really enjoy writing, and which I feel like if you hear how not articulate I am right now as I speak to you, that would come as a surprise. But I think I'm much more articulate in writing most of the time. But even still, I always felt like, when I wanted to write a story or I wanted to write poetry, I was always more inspired, really authentically inspired by music or by nature or by visual works than, reading other things. of course, reading other things is like wonderful to learn, and it's just beautiful to like soak in that art. But I feel like it never feels authentic. Like I can't be inspired by another story because it's just, and I would be copying it. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if that's making sense, but I always felt that when writing. And I think I like wanted to and want to, or have the vision to apply that to my kind of knitting design journey, which I'm just starting to enter and starting to experiment with. So I've enjoyed kind of thinking about natural elements and different textures or shapes that I would want to apply to, a motif, a lace or a cable motif. And I do have stitch dictionaries. I talked about that before, and I love those, and I love, looking at them and kind of getting that, getting the technical picture of how things can appear and show up on stitches. And I think that they're very valuable. But I wanted to like really try to make it something unique for me, and I'm in my limited, scope, because I am not the most seasoned knitter of all time. But I do love knitting, and I have knit a lot of things now. I think, compared to myself a year ago or 2 years ago, I've knit a lot. So even then, it's just, relative to myself. But I've been wanting to, first I was inspired by autumn, and I thought, oh, you know what, easily, pumpkins. I love pumpkins. I wanted to make something pumpkin inspired, but then I didn't really feel the pumpkins, and so I kind of thought of the idea of a harvest moon. And so I started kind of creating a motif. As you can see here, I don't know if you can really see it or if it will show up or if it will focus, but I've been ripping it back and going, and this is not the finished motif. I'm sharing it with you along the way so that you can kind of see the process with me. But I've thought of a harvest moon, and I don't know if you can really see it. It's very weak and a little muddled, I would say. I think that it definitely needs more definition and clarity, but I'm really inspired by this idea of a harvest moon, and I think I'm almost getting there. Kind of a full, gorgeous, beautiful autumnal moon, an autumnal, the night sky, the kind of golden autumn dusk. That's my biggest inspiration now. Just kind of, I think this colorway is what makes that inspiration come alive for me. And quite honestly, you could knit anything in this colorway and it would look gorgeous. This yarn is just so beautiful. I really love this gold. I love it, and Soleil is the perfect name for it. Even if I'm knitting a moon motif rather than a sun kind of motif, although it could technically also be like a sun, kind of autumnal sun, or a late summer sun. I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of, I'm shaping it into kind of like a round, lacy pattern that I kind of want to flow together. It's really still not, completed. It's not in its full form yet, but I'm enjoying the process, and I'm enjoying just kind of experimenting and watching it grow. And I thought, it would be fun to share that whole process with you. And I've kind of thought, maybe now, rather than ripping it back, because this is not its finished form, I might just continue on and do another, just continue on and leave this part here and allow that to be, for me, when I wear these socks, just the visual marker of the journey to the completed motif that I decide on, and the completed kind of shape and lace pattern that I, end up making. And the way that I started this is I got a piece of paper, made a little graph for myself, and kind of sketched out a chart just for my kind of thought process. I first thought I would do it without a chart. I would just go as I went and then kind of reverse engineer, like look back and try to figure out what I had done, but I realized that would just frustrate me. If I ended up liking something or not, I wouldn't like it. So I made a little chart and I started to follow it. And as I went along, I adjusted things. I added stitches here, I twisted stitches here, I kind of flipped things around, purled where I thought I would knit. I kind of then allowed it to grow out of what I had kind of sketched out. And that really worked really, really well for me, and is working really, really well, and is kind of the perfect balance between planning it out and kind of just spontaneously making it up as I go. Going back to writing, I remember hearing from a writer, like, watching some kind of a talk on writing, and hearing him talk about how some writers are like supposedly, architects, and some are gardeners. Some people when they write a novel, for example, will like write out the whole entire plot and storyline before, sketch it out, outline it, and then just write the story. They already know exactly how it's going to end. They know all the points that they want to hit. They know like character development. They know everything beforehand, and they just fill in the blanks. When they do the actual writing, it's just kind of like they're filling it in and kind of following the framework that they've created with their outline. And then there are other writers who are just gardeners and who have, the seed of an idea and begin writing their story and discover it along the way. And I think that this applies to so many creative endeavors. Nick talks about that in his music making a lot. I know that for him, the songwriting process, because he's a musician, is very organic, and the lyric writing comes after the songwriting. So I've like witnessed him writing songs, and the way that he sits there and, plays the guitar and kind of allows it to emerge, a song to emerge out of his playing, is so organic and just really amazing to see and to hear. I have seen like little kind of things that he's liked, I don't know the terms for it, but like the tune turns into a real song. And the lyrics come last for him, or not, I don't know if it's very last, he might correct me, but they come later. And the way that he just allows it to come to life is so amazing. But I know that there are also songwriters who, might write lyrics first, or who have have it very much in their head exactly as they think it is, and then they can just sketch it out and it's finished. Or there's just such a range. And I think that that also applies to my work, and definitely to visual arts. There are artists who sketch and then paint. Some artists just start and just go and allow it to come to life as they go. I know the medium sometimes dictates how much you can do that. With knitting and with kind of designing, there are definitely limitations, especially with my current set of skills and my current knowledge. I have to be a little bit more of an architect than maybe, someone with a lot more experience. Some people who, like, for example, have knit so many sweaters for themselves, know how to knit sweaters like just so naturally, probably can just, wouldn't have to calculate really hardly, compared to someone like me who, if I were to design a sweater for myself or design a sweater at all, I would really need to begin and knit a gauge, swatch, and really like calculate carefully exactly, every number. But now I know, for example, with certain yarns, I know my gauge pretty well. I have a pretty consistent gauge with yarns I know. So my gauge, I kind of could calculate with certain things. So, as you gain experience, you gain that freedom, sort of, I think. I think about, like, there are some knitters, like, for example, Inga of Knitting Traditions, the way that she kind of just improvises things sometimes, I'm always in awe of. But I think that's because she just has this amazing wealth of experience, and she knows the yarns and all the things that she does. I just am always amazed by her in that way. So I kind of felt like this was a project in which I learned that I'm, with knitting at this point, I felt very much that moment of architectural necessity, but also the joy of creative gardening, watching it come to life and watching it kind of reveal itself to me as I knit. The kind of motif that I want it to be. It's kind of appearing as I go, and I realize, oh, actually that should go there and that should go there. And it may sound silly because it's a little tiny small sock pattern that is just my very first attempt, and maybe in a couple of years I will like cringe at this. But it's been so much fun, and being in that space is something I've enjoyed so deeply. It's a space I've not been in for a long time, and it's been so much fun to kind of experiment and just grow and watch it change and shift along the way. So that's my first work in progress, my little pair of socks, which is so much fun. I've just loved it. And I still have this progress keeper, this little cute little waffle with cherries and whipped cream on top. Meanwhile, I've been working on my Elizabeth I, which I will wait to show you because the progress is, I think, not really visible. So next week, when I show you those sleeves, hopefully there's a bigger chunk of progress that I can show you and it's visible and it's obvious. And I've also been working a lot on my shawl pattern, which has also been so much fun. That kind of gardening process was also a joy, which I did mostly while I was in the States. And now I'm kind of knitting the final version and writing the pattern as I go, trying to be very accurate about it and So that's kind of where I'm at with those things, which I won't show those to you this week. Those are going on kind of behind the scenes, and I have a new cast on to share with you though today. And this cast on is so, oh my gosh. Okay, this cast on, I can't even express how much fun it's been to knit this. Like, my heart has not like beat in this way for a long time with the cast on. After the speech I just gave you about these socks, I feel like it's kind of a little bit dishonest to say that I don't get excited, and I haven't been that excited about things, but this has awoken a different side of me because it's a completely different project than anything I've worked on in quite a while. It's a little bonnet, or I don't know, it's actually not a bonnet. It's a balaclava, I think that's the right word. I'm knitting the Baby Bear Balaclava pattern from Knitting for Olive, and this pattern is such a cute pattern. I'll put a picture here of the pattern so you can see how it looks. I think balaclava is the right way to say it. I might be completely wrong. To be honest with you, when I read the word, I always think baklava every single time. So I am not really trustworthy on that, but I will put it here so you can tell, and obviously that will be in the show notes as well. It's basically, you know, just this kind of hood that you can put over your head, and it's like around your neck, and then there's just a hole here for your face. And it's actually a little baby pattern. As you can imagine, I'm knitting this for Esmeralda, for her winter time, for her fall, winter, spring, this next kind of season that's going to come, that feels like it's coming faster than ever. I'm just, you know, preparing for it with this pattern. And I knew I wanted to knit her a hat or a bonnet. I really love bonnets. I'm a big bonnet fan. Last year she had the cutest bonnet, and it was it was my favorite thing that I knit ever. I think it is my favorite thing I've ever knit because I just love seeing it on her so much, and it was such a cute, easy, quick pattern. It was just this little lacy bonnet, but it was so sweet and it looked so adorable on her, and it was just so cute. So I'm going to knit another one of those for her, probably more for like the next size, maybe for the springtime. But I thought I would start with this because this is just fun and I wanted to do it. And so here it is. This is what I have so far. This is the Baby Bear Balaclava. I cast it on and I couldn't stop knitting it after I'd cast it on. It has just been so much fun. And the reason why I also ended up deciding on this pattern was because I wanted it to match her little winter suit. My lovely mother-in-law, Andrea, hello if you're watching. Sometimes she watches my podcast. She is a very avid sewist, and she has sewn so many clothes for Esmeralda since she was born. I think the majority of her wardrobe are all from my mother-in-law, which is so wonderful and so sweet. She has made her little t-shirts and dresses and pants and all kinds of things. And this year she's going to make for her a wool, it's like a wool felt kind of suit for her to wear, and it's so gorgeous. And I wanted something to match that, or to kind of not match it, but complement it. It's definitely not matchy, but it's complementary. And I also wanted to use stash yarn because a little baby hat or, you know, bonnet or something like this, or balaclava. I feel like I'm not saying it right, but who knows. It's a small amount of yarn, so I didn't want to get any extra yarn for it. I wanted to use what I have. And so I looked into my stash, and the Knitting for Olive patterns are so cute, and they often require mohair and then, you know, a fingering weight or a DK weight or a worsted weight yarn. I think mostly fingering. But I had a little bit of leftover of this yarn here, which this is yarn I had knit a sweater for Esmeralda out of when she was little. I think her like 3 to 9 month old sweater was knit out of this yarn. And this is a homespun house yarn from many, many years ago. This is On the Banks of Plum Creek was this colorway. I don't know if Molly of a Homespun House has done more like renditions of the Little House books, but this was I think the first Banks of Plum Creek sock yarn. And it's so cute and so lovely. It's just kind of a beautiful natural bare color with little bits of kind of tonal bits of light minty green, like pink and orange, and and purple. It's really, really a sweet colorway, and I loved the sweater she had in this. And I had, I think 35 to 45 grams. I weighed it, but I don't remember. So it took such a small amount of yarn, that sweater. I had knit her the flax light for that little baby size. But I thought, you know, I have some cream yarn that if I run out of this, I can just pair with the mohair. But I had this in my stash and I was really excited to use this for this project. And then I had this mohair, which is just the Filcolana Tilia, 70% kid mohair, 30% silk yarn. And this is a colorway, I think colorway 361, kind of a, yeah, it's like a very beautiful pinkish, like rose, dark, dusty, warm tone. It's very beautiful. And together they make a really sweet combination. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I have shared before my love of fruit. Strawberries I love, but you know what it is? I don't know what it is, but things that are like fruit named, I just adore. And so The Banks of Plum Creek, I always love the name of this book because Plum Creek, Little House on the Prairie, I love it in general, but like Plum Creek sounds so delicious to me and so sweet and so wonderful and just so, you know, warm and nostalgic. And I feel like this looks like plum jam, or like I thought it looked like a raspberry and cream kind of a plum pudding. I don't know, kind of just like an amazing, beautiful, sweet combination. So it's what I've always dreamt of, actually, this exact combination. What I've been trying to achieve in many different facets of my knitting journey is exactly this feeling, like exactly the psychological joy I get from looking at this colorway I've been trying to find in so many different places, and now it's here. I don't know how else to put it. I don't think that will make sense, but maybe it will, because I just have been craving this exact flavor of colorway, and I have never seen it in the way that I see it here. So the pinks in this are not exactly, like they don't really match the pink of this mohair, but the mohair, the marling, it kind of blends it together to where it feels very intentional. Just the kind of, I don't know, if that, you know, if you see what I mean, it doesn't seem like it's mismatchy at all. This band is knit with 2 strands of merino in the written pattern, or 2 strands of the fingering weight yarn without the mohair to keep the mohair away from the baby's face. For obvious reasons, those little fluffies are not fun to get in your eyes or your nose or your mouth. So I have just a plain cream fingering weight sock yarn, which I held double with this one. And like I said, if I run out of this, I have that, which I'll blend with the mohair, and I'm quite sure that it will look cohesive and okay. And this part's going to be by her face, so that's the pretty part anyway. If the back of her head or like her neck is, you know, a little bit different without this gorgeous nuances of the speckled yarn, that's okay with me. Excuse me, I had to get up for a moment, but now I'm back, and yeah, all I want to say about this pattern is that it is a joy. And if you have any little children or babies, I would say older babies, like, yeah, I think the pattern starts at 3 months and up, but if you have little ones in your life who you need a little hat pattern for, I would really recommend this pattern. It's a lot of fun. It's not like, for me, it's a new construction, and it's a really fun construction with these little ears. There are a lot of, you know, short rows without giving too much away of the pattern. There are a lot of short rows. It's not like a completely mindless hat project or bonnet project, you know, bonnets that are like little, basically swatches that you knit a gusset and everything and then it's finished. But this is a little bit more involved than that, I think, but it's a really fun construction, and it kind of like, I'm really excited each row to keep knitting, and that little bit of interest just keeps me going while it's still in stockinette, which makes it super, you know, easy and relaxing in that sense. So I really enjoyed this pattern, and I can't wait to see it done and to see her wear it in the autumn and winter. I think it's going to be so nice to keep her head nice and warm and all cozy and fluffy with this mohair. I think it's just going to be such a lovely, lovely piece for her to wear. And yeah, for her to have this little, like, be a little baby bear prancing around the forest and the park. I'm so excited. Her one piece that she has that her grandmother is making for her is kind of a beautiful deep forest green color. And so I think that this kind of, you know, raspberry and cream color combination is going to look so lovely with that deep forest green together. So that's my second whip. I think that's all I have to share with you knitting-wise this week already. I have a couple of other fiber crafts to share with you, like I mentioned. I'll show you what I've been working on. I picked up The other night, I had left my knitting in the other room and I was just sitting down by my basket of whips, and I kind of felt a tiny bit of like a twinge of, not discomfort, but like, I don't know, I'm really careful about not overdoing it with my arm. Not because I've got an injury, but because I don't want to get an injury. And I felt sometimes like a little bit of this repetitive stress feeling, you know, kind of emerging, coming on in my arm. So when I feel that, I try to just take a break and stretch and do some stretches, and kind of rest it and warm it, you know, kind of give it a little bit of a break. And so when I felt that, I thought, you know what, look at this. I just saw my little needle felted project that I had started and never finished. And I kind of decided I would continue on with this little crown. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this crown. I already have a very beautiful one that I made for Esmeralda's birthday. I would love to have one for each season, but this one's like very spring and her birthday one is very spring. So I'm not sure, you know, what to do, but it's been really fun. I have a couple of flowers on there. I think I've shown you the beginnings of this one before. You know, little bits, kind of things, kind of the garden is kind of just growing. I started this butterfly, but I think I'm going to delete the butterfly and kind of tear it out and embroider a butterfly on the front rather than needle felt. I think it would look cute to have a kind of embroider and needle felt combination on the crown. So I'm really enjoying this. This is just a, you know, here and there project, but it was a perfect thing to pick up while I felt that bit of discomfort and I needed a break from the movement of knitting. What I really need is another project. You know, I need to cast on another project in plain stockinette where I can just purl the whole, or do it in continental style, because I'm an English knitter, and I think if I had a continental project that would provide a good rest, just that change of movement, I'm not sure, but that's my theory. For now, that's good. And that evening I didn't do much. I just kind of did here and there a little bit for like half an hour. And then I picked up my spindle and I did a tiny bit of spinning, and then I felt like, you know, it was time. I'm gonna grab it. I felt like it was time to take that yarn off and restart on the spindle because it was getting a bit heavy. I love when it gets heavy. This is a spindle I got years and years ago on Etsy, and it was the best investment. I think it was not that expensive at all. Maybe, you know, $20 to $30. And this is just an amazing spindle because I have all these little notches. When you're first learning, these little notches are so helpful. And even still, they're just helpful and fun. So it's like a gear, a little bit of steampunk vibes. I'm not really into the steampunk thing, but if you're into that, this is a cool thing. So it's kind of, it looks like a gear, which is kind of cool and fun. But these little notches make it really easy to hold the yarn while you're then like going up. I don't know the proper terms, but I have this gorgeous roving that I'm spinning from, and I'm really inspired again to continue with this, you know, long term. And I think this would make a gorgeous cowl, like just a beautiful cowl. I'm not really a big cowl person usually, but I think like a tightly knit, kind of firmish fabric cowl in this colorway would be beautiful and would highlight the hand spun and the colorway so well. So this is the little skein I have to show you. As you can see, I don't know if it will focus, but there it is. It's so sweet. I really love it. I'm going to open it up so you can see a little bit more of how the yarn looks. This is also my like pick it up here, pick it up there spinning project. I've not been a super consistent spinner the past couple of years, unfortunately. So I think that shows in my spinning, but I really like the result, and I really like the very kind of little bit light, thick and thin kind of fun texture that this has. And I've been playing it on the fly, doing a Navajo 3-ply, I think is what it's called. I'll put a link in the show notes to how I do that, to the tutorial that I learned from, if I can find it. I learned that a long time ago. If I can't find that one, I'll put another tutorial there. But I really enjoyed this. It's so much fun, and it's just been such a joy to see it finished. Just tiny mini skein. It's a tiny mini skein, so I have a lot more to spin if I want, you know, the whole thing. But piece by piece, you know, little bit by bit. It's going to continue growing, and maybe at some point I'll have enough for that cowl or that project. I think it's 100 grams, so that would definitely be enough for a cowl. Maybe even half of that. If I just spun up half of it, I could make a cowl with that. But yeah, those are my other little fiber art projects. I've so been enjoying these, and I can't wait to continue with some spinning. I think if I just did 10 minutes a day, that would make a major dent in that roving, and I would have that yarn a lot sooner. But you know, we'll see. We'll see what I do. Maybe it'll be, you know, later in the year, or New Year's resolution or something, 2022. Those are my knitting projects I have to show you. Those are my fiber arts projects I have to show you. I hope that you enjoyed that. You can also find me on Instagram, of course, as usual, as Merryweather Knitting, and on Ravelry too, as gabriellak. Always feel free to send me a DM and chat with me. I love to hear from you, and I'd love to just chat with you about what you're up to and what you're making. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe if you are interested. I record videos every week, and I can't wait to see you again next week for another podcast. In the meantime, take care and knit lots of wonderful things that you love.